Firstly, for those, just a reminder, Phil Williams, my wife Annie, we've been married for 162 years.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, maybe nearly a mere 29, something like that. And we live in this wonderful landlocked place called Nailsea. Somebody was reminding me today that actually I should have looked at a map. When I saw the town Nailsea, I thought it was by the sea, and it was only when I moved there that I realised it wasn't. But God has an amazing sense of humour, because He's put me in this place to serve the surfing community, which I've been doing amazingly 20 years this year. He's put me there because the job has grown from the initial job, which was just looking after Christian Surfers UK, to a European role where I'm in charge of, when I say in charge, I'm helping coordinate 10 different countries, from Norway in the north right the way down to Portugal in the south. And God's doing some amazing stuff through that. But it's always fantastic to be back. I did miss the skate park, so I brought my gear with me, but we'll see if we can use that later. But I just do want to thank you as a church and the PCC, and that young vicar chappie there, for involving us in your missions. It's really key for us to be supported by churches. We've been living by faith for the last 14 years now, and that's quite a scary thing. So it is so good to get support, some prayers, and even a bit of finances from a number of people to help us do and continue to do what we believe God's called us to do. If you did want ever to get on our newsletter, they don't come out as regularly as I'm sure some people would like, but just come and see us afterwards and we'll update you with the mad adventures of the Williams family. So that's who we are, that's what I do. I also do this Christian skaters thing, which I'm desperate to try and find some youngster that's far more relevant to skateboarders than this old boy here. And every time I give it back to people, they do nothing with it, and then I get phone calls say, Phil, just take it back. So I'll try and be obedient on that one, but as you can see, I still love my skateboarding, but at 54, I'm not quite as young as even I think I am. So, next slide, please. Just want to encourage you as a congregation on behalf of the wider Malmesbury Abbey, and in fact Malmesbury community. As a result of the Abbey Fest that we've been doing here for 8 years, word gets round, and I had this random chat at about 2 years ago, or 18 months ago, at a Christian Resources exhibition. This guy was trying to sell me coffee, and we just got caught talking. I said I do some outdoor events, and we started going through some of the events, and I mentioned Malmesbury Abbey, and his eyes lit up, and we chatted a little bit about it, and his last throwaway line was, "You can come and do it in Gloucester Cathedral." And I just walked away and smiled. Anyway, that wasn't such a throwaway line, and after a year's planning, in April this year we ran the first ever Gloucester Cathedral skate event. And again, very similar to you guys, but it would not have happened, I really believe, had it not been for this 8 years of working with community and partnering. So just thank you so much. There's all sorts of discussions going on. We did an event in Exeter Cathedral, just outside the cathedral, about 4 weeks ago, and we've still got to, shall I say, challenge, see if we can get anywhere near Bristol, but that's another story altogether. But yes, so you never underestimate what God can do when we work together. Just as far as what's the next slide? Just as far as the family is concerned, it's a time of change for us, so prayers appreciated. Annie, that works in Bristol Cathedral Choir School, has just started her new job in July, so she'll be moving out from her traditional place where she's the fulcrum of the whole school there, into a multi-academy trust where she's got a key role within that. So she's on the move, and that's going to be very strange from being in an office that everybody knows where you are to being halfway up Park Street. So if you are halfway up Park Street and you see Annie waving out the window, just go and say hello to her. Abbey, my daughter, she's 21, and she's also just started a job about 2 weeks ago. It's her second job in PR and advertising. And my son, he's an apprentice for Coutts Bank. He's just started a new job on July the 1st. So lots of change. So please continue to pray for us as a family. And myself, really, we have a manic period of time through the summer. It's virtually events every single week, so just pray for travel mercies and safety and enough people and resources to do all the things that we believe God's calling us. And also, when I am away, that Annie can somehow manage to keep the house together when I'm not there. But we have just been, yesterday was the culmination of 20 months of work. This was our old, if you just go back that one slide, sorry. That was our old Nailsea skate park. It's a skate park that has supported the community for 14 years. And we've been running a skate festival there as a way of going into our community and showing God outside of four walls. And I had no idea that probably as a result of those 14 years of service, we would be in an opportunity where we felt God was saying, you may well be the instigator to see whether you can replace that skate park. So in September 2014, at the Nailsea Skate Festival, we dreamt and we said, what if we can take this old beaten up skate park, which is old metal ramps with big cuts in them. The skateboarders, the rollerbladers would never complain because otherwise the park would shut. What if we could raise over £100,000 and build ourselves a brand new skate park? So next slide. So yesterday was the culmination of that incredible project. We've raised £116,000. The total project cost £117,500. It's taken a fair amount of time, but it's just been an incredible opportunity to work with the community. And I've got a new breed of person that lives in Nailsea. They're called LOLs. And an LOL is a little old lady. I'm not going to say when that age starts. And they come up to me in the street and say, I believe you're raising funds for a new skate park. And they give me donations and things. There are some little old men, LOMs as well, but it's just been amazing. And if you just next slide. So that was the opening of our brand new skate park yesterday. It was quite an emotional time because it's just been absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to getting part of my life back. But just to see the legacy that has been raised by this park, and the faith element has always been in there, and never ever take the faith element out. If you think God's on it, don't be afraid to put it in there. If the press don't want to talk about it, that's down to them. But I really would encourage you, if you think God's in something and you think the church is in something, then just keep putting it in there. So I just, it's been amazing, and I'm looking forward to, in some respects, just skating it myself actually. So yeah. Anyway, on to today's passage. Next slide, please. You won't need to put any more slides on. The Good Samaritan. Hands up. Most of you know it pretty well, don't you? Okay. Who can remember it as a kid? Yeah, I certainly can. Anyway, I think, to be honest, it's a bit old now, so we just need to update it. I realise that's heresy in this cathedral, but I'm sorry about that. But I think it really is time to update it. So the good news is there's some great actors in this church, I know, and that's really important. And we've been practicing for probably about 6 or 7 weeks now to get this next bit of the service right. So Annie is going to give all the actors and the actresses what we need. So we're looking for a skateboarder, a really keen skateboarder. Young man in the green, you just put the helmet on, please. You don't need to skate in the church. And if you could, that board is almost as old as you. It's 40 years old. If you could go to the side there, please, and put the helmet on. Okay. Matt Bird, you've got a skateboard. Would you like to? Okay. Holly, you're on this one. You're a scooterer. Okay. Now I don't know this gentleman's name on the left-hand side. Pete. Pete, if you could be another skateboarder and come this way as well. Now, John tells me he's injured, so if he can sit on the front seat here, if you go over there, and John is the Malmesbury Massive. Okay. So I've rewritten this in the hope that you might find it, just be able to focus on it. So the first few verses are as per the Bible, and then it changes a bit. In reply, he said, you have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbour? In reply, Jesus said, a skateboarder was going down from Chippenham to Malmesbury, enter old skateboarder, when he was attacked by the Malmesbury Massive. So the Malmesbury Massive, this is your opportunity to hit your vicar so he lies down there. And take his helmet off, please. Now Malmesbury, old boy, can you, oh dear, he did that. You might want to go over there.
Sorry.
Could you go over there, please, to dive? That's awesome. Okay. So, anyway, Malmesbury Massive can now sit down with the helmet he's taken. Yeah, just stay there, that's fine. They took his helmet and protective padding, beat him up, went away, leaving him half dead. A fellow skateboarder, Matt Bird, came past, obviously, fellow skateboarder, he's bound to look after him. He happened to be going down the same road, then he saw the man, but he passed by on the other side, down the aisle. Not good. Another fellow skateboarder, Pete, he also came down the road. He's bound to help, okay? But when he saw him, he also passed by on the other side of the road. And then guess what? The arch enemy, a scooter rider, came down the road. As he travelled there, he saw him and took pity on him. She went to him and helped him up, bought him a Costa coffee, lent him the scooter to get home. And the next day took him to Malmesbury Abbey, who took care of him. The next day, she took out 2 cream donuts and gave them to the vicar. She said, "Look after him," he said, "and please tell him he's really too old to skateboard now. But if he needs a new helmet, I will reimburse him for the extra expense you have." And then the big question, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbour to the skateboarder who fell into the hands of the Malmesbury Massive? The expert of the law replied, "The scooter rider, the one who had mercy." Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." What about a round of applause for these amazing people? I think they're showing that again another 2 nights up in the High Street if you'd like to go and see them. So yeah, it was a little bit of fun there, but hopefully it'll a way of just bringing it up to date for today. Bit of background really, and then what I want to do is just talk about for probably 5 or 6 hours on the relevance of that in our lives. And then how can we go forward with regards to this today? So first of all, the background to it, the road from Jerusalem to Jericho was about 18 miles long, not paved obviously, very, very steep and notorious for its danger and difficulty. And in fact, in those days, it was known as the Way of Blood because of the blood which was often spilt by the robbers there. So it's not one of those, there's a couple of back alleys in Malmesbury, but it was even worse than that. Jesus' target, who he was talking to, the Jews, actually hated the Samaritans. I know it sounds obvious, but Samaritans are people from Samaria, to such a degree that when he asked the question, the lawyer's phrase, "the one who had mercy on him," may indicate a reluctance to even use the name Samaritan. The Samaritans in turn hated the Jews. Tensions were particularly high in the early decades of the 1st century because Samaritans had desecrated the Jewish temple at the Passover with human bones. Leo, who do you support?
Leicester City.
Leicester City, okay. Does anybody support a London team? Oh dear. Okay, but it's far worse rivalry than me who supports Chelsea against an Arsenal fan or a Tottenham fan. We're talking real deep hatred in this thing. So you can see there that there was really deep roots for the people just walking away. And the other thing, in Jewish culture, contact with a dead body was understood to be defiling. And priests particularly had to avoid uncleanliness. The priest and the Levite may therefore have assumed that the fallen traveller was dead and avoided to keep themselves ritually clean. So passing by on the other side avoided checking, so whether he was dead or alive, but they just didn't want to get involved. But no matter, the background to it is the person that showed mercy was the person that was most unlikely to. The lawyer in verse 25 was somebody that basically knew everything, And yet he was asking Jesus some strange things because he's a lawyer. He knew about the law. And he said, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" Bit of a deep question. So how did Jesus answer it? Well, Jesus was pretty clever. He was quite used to being tricked by all these sorts of things. So he batted it straight back. And he said, "Well, what does it say in the law? You know, you're a lawyer. What's it say in the law?" This conversation continued. And the lawyer then said back, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbour as yourself." Now, the lawyer, in some respects, was still trying to get one up on Jesus. So he doesn't show humility by saying, "How can I do this since I'm imperfect and simple man?" But instead he tries to justify himself by saying, basically, "But who is my neighbour?" And then Jesus said, "Which of these three do you think was your neighbour?" To the man who fell into the hands of the robbers. And the lawyer, the expert of the law, replied, "The one who had mercy on him." And Jesus said that very simple, small line, "Go and do likewise." I find it quite interesting that this is, when we talk about a neighbour, you know, if I said to you, "Who is your neighbour?" without putting in context this passage, you'd probably say Mr. Biggins, number 25 down the road, or, you know, if you're in the manse, you say, well, the funny gardener over the top, I don't know. But that's your neighbour. But in fact, quite interesting, what he said, the lawyer, was the one who showed most mercy. And so I was thinking that's a bit strange, so I did look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary. So what is the definition of your neighbour? The obvious one, the first one, was a person living next door to or very near to the speaker or person referred to. And the second one said, using the biblical principle, any person in need of one's help or kindness. Love thy neighbour as ourselves. So that's a sort of bit of a context to it. But it's obviously clear to me that your neighbour is not just the person that lives next door to you. When anything I do, it's try to say, well, where is this relevant? Why is it relevant for me today? You know, I'm going to go outside of this church that's, I always think it's 850 years old. I don't know, it might be even older by now, 851 years old or something. But even older than me and Neil put together. We're going to go out of here and we're going to live our lives this week. So what relevance is this to us? I think to me, the first challenge is, for me as a God person in my community, what does that actually mean? I honestly believe that Phil Williams is a full-time surf skate missionary, okay? But every one of us are missionaries within our own community. It took me a long time to realise that when I first got involved with Christian Surfers, and I went to this international conference and there was all these full-time missionaries, surfing missionaries, and all I did was run a big distribution centre. How on earth could I, be in the same place? And God told me so clearly, if you're where I ask you to be, you're as much a missionary as every one of these people here. And that was really heartwarming. So I'd encourage you, whether you're in the local school, whether you're at Dyson's, whether you're retired and you're in your community, you are as much a full-time missionary as me or anybody else that might come through this building who so say is full-time. So just be encouraged and just remember, God's encouraged you to be there and you are that God person. So going back to the who is my neighbour, how are we in our streets? Some of you live in a street that you know quite a lot of each other. Others, maybe a busy street. Certainly in the winter we see very little of each other. But I still do believe on that very simple basis that we have a responsibility as a Christian to be there. Occasionally, Annie and I may even raise our voice at each other. Every now and again when Annie's wrong, I have to raise my voice with her. And I often think, we have a bathroom window, we have a bedroom window. I'm sure the neighbours every now and again, oh, Phil and Annie at it again. So I think the simplest term to be a Christian presence and witness in our own street is still really important. And likewise, if you do something positive in your neighbourhood, if you do something positive in your street, You don't do it because you want somebody to pat you on the back and say, well done. It's amazing how quickly that news spreads. And I'm very much aware that that skate park that we built was not Phil Williams. Yes, of course, there had to be somebody that was heading it up, but I couldn't have done it on my own. And there was a massive amount of goodwill in our community. And the word spread that we were trying to do something. So in the same way, if there's people in your community that you help, you just never know who's going to hear about that. And as a presence of witness, that is so, so important. Apparently, our neighbours might actually not just be the people we like. There is an idea that in our streets, in our communities, there may be people that actually we're not too keen on, or we find a real hard struggle. But God tells us to love thy neighbour. So that could be pretty difficult. I really do believe that this whole neighbourhood thing, this community that each one of us is part of, is not just geographic. Each one of you has got a passion. If I was to say, you know, who is a bird spotter, who is a train spotter, who has a passion for, I don't know, perhaps, yeah, I can't believe you've got a passion for accountancy, but you may have. There might be like an accountancy club, okay? If you've got a passion for that, your neighbours are in that scenario. So when you think about what you've done this last week, you think about any of those clubs, any of those societies, whether in person or online, you are a part of that community and they are part of your neighbourhood. So for me, when I look back, even today, you know, I've served the surfing community for 20 years, so you do get to know a lot of people. There was a girl competing today. She managed to get into the finals of the big pro contest down in Spain. Amazing. We've known Peony since she was probably 7 or 8 years old, you know, and this is the first high-profile contest she's got. So the least I can do is just text her this morning, not to say, hey, Peony, you know, I'm praying that you win. It's just, hey, Peony, I'm so, so stoked for you. That's a surfing phrase. I'm very, very happy for you. And I'm going to pray that the white waves come through and then you're able to at least give your best to it. And she just sent me a really nice text back saying, thanks so much, Phil, it means so much. Now, that is because you're building relations. And Peony lives 120 miles away, but as far as she's concerned, as far as I'm concerned, we're neighbours through our passion. I actually think that loving your neighbour can be quite good fun at times. Has anybody heard of RAC? Random Acts of Kindness? Okay. Random Acts of Kindness, there was, I think, was it, I'm trying to think now, I've only just come to it, was it Advent? Something, 40 Acts of Kindness or something? Stewardship thing. Anyway, so Random Acts of Kindness is something that personally I love getting involved with. Okay, has anybody, I won't ask you, but has anybody sort of done a random act of kindness that, you know, in the last week or so that made you smile? Made the other person smile? Okay, some of you are just too shy to say it because obviously we'll think you're very good people, and some of you will think, actually, I might just try that next week. So it's all about a way of trying to go out of your way to bless somebody in a way that they may not be expecting at a time they may not be expecting it. Do you remember DJ Sam, who was at the Malmesbury Abbey Skate Fest? Okay. Does anybody remember DJ Sam with a big beard, big lovable DJ? Okay. So he was with us this weekend. He lost his voice actually, which for a DJ was quite interesting, and the MC on the mic. But anyway, he was telling me about this, and there was this drinking game they used to, on Facebook and everything, social media, they used to call people out to drink as much as they could, and it was really, really dangerous. And he wanted to say, you know what, I'm not happy with this. It's putting people's lives at risk. I'm going to try and do exactly the same, but with random acts of kindness, and just see if we can get momentum on that. And he was telling me of these amazing stories of this. He would call out for the next person and they would do random acts of kindness and go on and on and on. And Annie, do you just want to share about your...
Well, I didn't do it.
No, you didn't do it, but you knew somebody.
Just to make it sort of relevant.
Oh, I've got the mic, sorry.
I've got a big voice. Just to make it sort of relevant, Phil says I work in a school. November's always a very dark month, so within the school we said, right, let's just do some random acts of kindness, and you would sometimes appear in the morning and there'd be something in your pigeonhole, might be a coffee on your desk, someone might buy you some flowers, and everyone just did it through November, and it was just a great way of just lifting people. And it wasn't a faith thing, it didn't have a faith thing behind it, it was just a way of engaging with the community. But something that happened 2 weeks ago that really challenged me in my faith and as a person with a faith was a friend of mine who I work with, she doesn't have a faith, but she was in the hairdressers on a Saturday. And as you do, once you've gone beyond the, where have you been on holiday, what are you doing this evening, she was listening to the lady who was having her hair done next to her. And she heard her story, and her story was that she was a full-time carer for her husband. She only got out and had time for herself sort of a couple hours a week. And it just so happened that this week she was having her hair done because that was what she could afford this week. So my lovely friend quietly spoke to her hairdresser and said, I want to pay her bill, but I don't want her to know. So she paid her for her to have her hair done and hoped that she would be on her way before the lady finished having her hair done. Of course, it didn't happen, and this lady found out, everyone was in tears, it was all so lovely, and she was sharing it with me, and I just thought, oh my goodness, what an example of someone who just had compassion in the situation she was in because of what she'd heard, not because of her faith, not because she felt called by God to, try and make an impact with people around her, but just because of who she was as a person. And that really challenged me as an individual to think beyond my sort of four walls and my life, and just to think slightly beyond it, and to look for those God moments where actually we could do something, maybe like that, maybe not, but just to make an impact on someone's life. So those were just two very simple, practical examples. Thanks.
And if you are interested, there's actually a website, randomactsofkindness.org, which encourages you, with stories, but actually also you could upload your own story. So I think you can actually have fun loving your neighbour. I actually remember the times when you tried it. You don't just randomly try it. I just go out in the morning and think, you know what, God, if there's something you want me to do, just give me that divine appointment. And I think with all of these things, prayer is so important. So in conclusion, really, of course it's a very well-known story. You've obviously seen it updated now, and you'll probably never forget that. But the key elements, which I just encourage you, are relevant for today. It's not just about our next door physical neighbours. It's about anybody that needs help and support, and we feel that God is calling out for us to go that extra mile for them. Many of that will be unsung heroes. The two ladies that we said cheerio to today, or thanks today, unsung heroes, the people at the Skate Fest, for me, unsung heroes. And he was telling me about one girl that I hardly ever noticed yesterday, and she was just picking up rubbish the whole day. So many of these acts of kindness, many of these loving your neighbours, nobody will see apart from you, your neighbour, and God. I think it's really important that you shouldn't be false about trying to love your neighbour when you're actually just doing it for praise and thanks. But there are some really challenging neighbours, either geographically or within our community. And again, some of those are not easy to get alongside with because they may just throw it back in your face, but just keep praying, keep the faith on that. I really do believe asking specifically for guidance in that is such a powerful thing. The world, changing the world is a big place, but I honestly believe that lots of us doing our little bit can make a real difference to the community. And I know that community in Manchester, the Message, they've taken some people to live in some of the darker, harder areas of those tough Manchester estates. And if you listen, it's not been great, they're putting their families at risks, but you listen to see what the police and the community things have done. They're making a difference. Some of those areas have been cleaned up. Some of those areas are completely different to where they were. So I honestly think that it is a massive task for us. I think it's one of those things that we never get to the end of it. We don't stop loving our neighbour. And God continues to encourage us. You know what? Well done, a good and faithful servant. And here's the next person I want you to love. So I'll just close in prayer. Lord, I want to thank you for our neighbours. I want to thank you for the fact that you have given us a whole community around us, Lord. whether it's physically in our geography or it's our passions, or whether it's corporately as a church, Lord. You have called us to make a difference to this world, Lord. You have called us to be salt and light, Lord. So I pray even this week you would encourage us, just perhaps give us 1 or 2 opportunities just to give out random acts of kindness or cross boundaries we haven't done for a while, Lord. And who knows what, Lord, perhaps a week today we can perhaps share it and it'll become infectious and we can continue doing it. Amen.